Arya had always believed that life was meant to be busy. She thrived on challenges, loved the feeling of completing tasks on time, and felt a strange sense of satisfaction when her days were fully packed. But over time, the constant rush began to weigh her down. Waking up early in the morning and rushing to work, sitting through endless meetings, answering emails, and juggling countless responsibilities became the norm. Her mind never seemed to rest. She would think about work while making breakfast, plan the next day during lunch, and replay stressful conversations during the night. Even though she had achieved many things in her career, there was a hollow feeling that grew inside her. Slowly but steadily, she often sat in her small apartment in the evening, staring at the walls as if hoping they could give her some kind of answer or comfort. The quiet of her home was supposed to be peaceful, but her thoughts were loud. She remembered the days when weekends used to feel like a gift. She could go for long walks, meet friends, or simply do nothing at all. But now, weekends had become another checklist of tasks. Laundry, grocery shopping, cleaning, catching up on work that piled up during the week. Of it left her drained. There was no moment that felt truly hers. No time where she could just breathe without thinking about the next thing she had to do. Her friends noticed the change. They would invite her out for coffee or casual dinners, but she often declined. She didn't have the energy for long conversations, and she feared she wouldn't be able to enjoy herself. She told herself it was just a busy period, something temporary. But weeks turned into months, and the fatigue remained. Sometimes she caught herself staring blankly at the ceiling, wondering if life was supposed to feel like this. Full of constant stress with only brief moments of relief, Arya tried different ways to cope. She started exercising, hoping that jogging in the park or attending a yoga class would help her release the tension she carried. It helped for a little while, but soon her mind would drift back to worries and pending tasks. She tried reading books and watching movies, but even these activities felt mechanical. She realized she was going through the motions, not truly enjoying the moment. Her sleep was restless, filled with fragmented dreams that mirrored the chaos of her day. She would wake up feeling even more tired than the night before, and the cycle repeated itself endlessly. One afternoon, after a particularly draining day at work, Arya returned home and collapsed on her sofa. She didn't even have the energy to change out of her office clothes. She reached for her phone and mindlessly scrolled through social media, seeing friends sharing moments of joy, laughter, and relaxation. A pang of envy mixed with sadness hit her. Why did it feel like everyone else was moving forward, enjoying life, while she was stuck in this loop of exhaustion? She put her phone down and closed her eyes. She tried to take deep breaths, focusing on the in and out, hoping to calm her racing mind. It worked for a few seconds, then the list of unfinished tasks and worries returned. She felt frustrated with herself. Why couldn't she find peace? Why did simple relaxation feel like a distant dream? She remembered her grandmother once telling her that music could heal the soul. Certain melodies had the power to calm even the most troubled heart. Arya had always been a fan of music, but lately she had no time for it. She rarely played any songs, and when she did, she barely noticed the sound. Lost in her own thoughts, curiosity sparked in her, and she decided to explore music once again. She picked up her laptop and searched for playlists that promised relaxation. She wasn't expecting much. She had tried similar things before, soft pop, instrumental tracks, but they never held her attention. Today, though, something different caught her eye. A playlist titled Long Play Classical Music for Relaxation. Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart appeared on the screen. The description promised hours of continuous music, carefully selected to soothe the mind and body. Arya hesitated for a moment. Classical music was something she knew about only in fragments, mostly from school lessons or background music in cafes. She didn't know if it could make a difference. But she was willing to try anything at this point. She clicked play, and the room was soon filled with the gentle, flowing notes of Chopin's piano. At first, she just listened without paying much attention, expecting her mind to wander as usual. But then something unexpected happened. The music had a rhythm that seemed to match her own heartbeat, soft yet deliberate. It wasn't loud or demanding. It didn't force her to think or react. It simply existed, and in that existence, She found herself letting go of tension she didn't even realize she had been holding. Her shoulders, which had been stiff from hours at a desk, relaxed. Her hands, resting on her lap, felt lighter. The tightness in her chest began to ease. For the first time in months, Arya felt present. She wasn't thinking about work, deadlines, or obligations. She was simply listening. The melodies of Chopin seemed to carry stories, emotions, and gentle whispers that spoke to her heart. As the music flowed seamlessly into Beethoven, Arya noticed a shift. There was a quiet strength in the notes, a sense of resilience that felt oddly comforting. It was as if the music was telling her that it was okay to pause, to take a moment for herself, to breathe and exist without constantly achieving. Hours passed, though it felt like only minutes. Arya remained on her sofa, fully immersed, letting the sound fill every corner of her apartment and her mind. The outside world, with its demands and chaos, felt distant. She realized she hadn't experienced such calm in a long time, perhaps ever since she started her career. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. A release she hadn't known she needed. This simple act of listening sparked something deeper in her. Arya understood that she had been running on autopilot, neglecting her own needs, and forgetting that relaxation was not a luxury, but a necessity. The music had reminded her of the importance of slowing down and giving herself permission to rest. She also noticed that her apartment, which had seemed empty and lifeless before, now felt warmer, more alive. The music had transformed the atmosphere, turning it into a sanctuary. Even if only for a little while, the next morning, Arya woke up feeling a small but noticeable difference. Her sleep had been deeper than usual, her mind clearer. She remembered the music she had listened to the night before and felt a sense of anticipation. Maybe today, things wouldn't feel so heavy. She decided to keep the playlist playing while she prepared for work. As she sipped her morning tea and looked out the window, the notes of Mozart filled the room, light and playful, lifting her spirits. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was starting her day in survival mode. There was space for calm, even in a busy world. The impact of that first evening extended into the following days. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, she returned to the music, letting it guide her through stressful moments. She began noticing little changes. Her patience with coworkers improved. She laughed more freely, and she was able to focus on tasks without feeling suffocated by anxiety. Music became her companion, quietly helping her navigate the chaos of modern life. It reminded her that amidst deadlines, responsibilities, and pressures, there was always a way to reconnect with herself, to find peace. Even if only for a few hours, Arya's journey into the world of classical music had only begun. But that first night had opened a door she hadn't realized was closed. The stress that had seemed insurmountable no longer felt permanent. She understood that relaxation wasn't about escaping life, but about creating moments where life could breathe, where the mind could rest, and where the soul could remember the simple joy of being alive. And for Arya, the gentle flow of Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart had become the key to unlocking that peace, one note at a time. After that first evening, Arya's curiosity about classical music grew stronger. She found herself looking forward to her evenings at home, where she could escape the noise and chaos of her daily life. She explored more playlists, discovering hours-long recordings of Chopin's nocturnes, Beethoven's symphonies, and Mozart's sonatas. Each session was a journey, taking her through moods she had almost forgotten existed. There was sadness in some melodies that made her feel understood, joy in others that lifted her spirits, and a sense of calm that filled the spaces inside her that had been neglected for years. She began to notice how music affected her body. The tension in her shoulders and neck eased as she sat quietly listening. Her breathing became slower and steadier, and a feeling of warmth spread through her chest. She realized that for the first time in a long time, she was truly present. Unlike other forms of distraction she had tried, this was not about avoiding life or drowning in entertainment. It was about connection with herself, with her feelings, and with something greater than her daily struggles. One rainy evening, she decided to prepare a cup of tea and sit by the window. watching the drops slide down the glass as Beethoven's soft piano pieces filled the room. The world outside seemed far away, and for a moment, nothing else existed. She reflected on her past weeks, realizing that she had spent so much time reacting to life rather than experiencing it. She had allowed herself to be swept along by responsibilities, missing the subtle beauty in ordinary moments. The music reminded her that life was not just a list of tasks, but a collection of fleeting experiences, each with its own quiet significance. Arya also began to learn about the composers themselves. She read about Chopin's life in Warsaw and Paris, about Beethoven's struggles with hearing loss, and Mozart's journey as a child prodigy. Knowing their stories made the music feel even more alive. When she listened to Chopin's melancholic nocturnes, she imagined the composer sitting at his piano, pouring his emotions into every note. When she heard Beethoven's symphonies, she thought of the resilience it must have taken to create such powerful music despite his challenges. This knowledge deepened her appreciation and made listening a richer experience. She started setting aside specific times for her music sessions. Morning tea with Mozart, afternoon breaks with Chopin, evenings with Beethoven became small rituals that structured her day in a gentle and meaningful way. Friends noticed a difference too. She was calmer, more attentive during conversations, and even smiled more easily. Work still had its pressures, but she found that she could approach challenges with a clearer mind. Music became a kind of anchor, something stable she could return to no matter how chaotic the outside world became. The change was subtle at first. She would catch herself humming along to a melody while walking to the grocery store or pausing to close her eyes for a few seconds while listening to a gentle symphony. Her apartment, once just a place to sleep, now felt alive and comforting. She even rearranged her living space slightly, adding soft lighting and a comfortable chair near her speakers. The room became a sanctuary where she could retreat, recharge, and reflect without judgment or expectation. One Saturday morning, she invited a friend over to share her newfound discovery. She prepared coffee, placed a small speaker on the table, and let the music play in the background. At first, her friend was skeptical, unsure if classical music could hold anyone's attention for long. But as the hours passed, both of them sat quietly, lost in the flow of melodies. The experience was peaceful, and they spoke less and listened more, savoring the calm. Arya realized that music not only helped her relax, but also created shared moments of connection. Even without words, Arya's relationship with her emotions began to change as well. She had always struggled to sit with her feelings, often pushing them aside in the rush of daily life. With music, she discovered it was okay to feel deeply without being overwhelmed. A slow, melancholic piano piece allowed her to acknowledge sadness without judgment. While a lively symphony brought laughter and lightness naturally, over time she became more self-aware, noticing how different pieces affected her mood and energy. This awareness gave her a sense of control she hadn't had before, helping her navigate life with more balance. Work stress still existed, but it no longer consumed her. When deadlines approached or problems arose, she would take a short break and play a soothing piece, allowing her mind to reset before returning to the task. This small practice made a big difference in her productivity and overall well-being. She realized that relaxation wasn't about escaping life, preparing herself to face it with clarity and calm. Arya also began to explore the idea of music as a tool for meditation. She learned that listening mindfully, paying attention to each note, rhythm, and pause could be as grounding as traditional meditation practices. She practiced this during her lunch breaks, sitting quietly in her office, headphones on, fully immersed in the sound. These moments became little pockets of peace in an otherwise hectic day, and she noticed that even after short sessions, she felt lighter and more focused. Her journey with music slowly started influencing other parts of her life. She became more intentional about her daily routines, finding small ways to introduce calm and beauty. Cooking became an opportunity to play music and enjoy the process rather than rush through it. Walking home in the evening became a mindful activity, noticing sounds, colors, and the rhythm of her own steps. Life didn't become perfect or free from stress, but it became richer, more textured, and more meaningful, as weeks turned into months. Aria began to notice a lasting sense of peace. She no longer felt the constant edge of anxiety that had once defined her days. Music had taught her patience, presence, and self-compassion. It reminded her that she didn't have to push through life relentlessly to be worthy or productive. She could pause, listen, and simply exist without guilt. The world was still fast and demanding, but she had found a way to navigate it with grace and calm. One evening, while listening to a particularly long recording of Chopin's nocturnes, Aria closed her eyes and allowed herself to drift in the melodies. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for this discovery. It wasn't just about relaxation. It was about reconnecting with herself, with the beauty in everyday moments, and with a form of art that transcended time. She thought about the busy days ahead, but realized that no matter what came, she now had a tool to restore balance and peace. The music had become more than sound. It had become a companion, a teacher, and a source of comfort that would continue to guide her in ways she had never imagined. Over the following weeks, Aria's life began to change in ways she had not anticipated. Music had become more than a temporary escape. It was now woven into the fabric of her daily routine. She found herself planning her days not just around work and responsibilities, but around moments where she could reconnect with the melodies that had become so important to her. The simple act of sitting down to listen to a long classical piece was no longer just a way to relax. It was a ritual that gave her strength, clarity, and peace. Mornings became brighter and gentler. Instead of rushing to get ready for work, she would start her day with a soft piano piece by Chopin. The notes seemed to stretch time, allowing her to move slowly and mindfully through her morning routine. She noticed small details she had previously overlooked: the way sunlight streamed through her window, the aroma of coffee, the sound of birds outside. These tiny observations brought her a quiet joy that filled her even before stepping out into the hectic world beyond her apartment at work. Aria carried the calm she gained from music into her interactions. She no longer reacted immediately to stressful emails or sudden changes in plans. Instead, she paused, took a few deep breaths, and allowed herself to respond with thought and patience. Her colleagues noticed a subtle change. She was more composed, more attentive, and more present. Even minor challenges that would have upset her before now felt manageable. Music had not removed the pressures of life, but it had given her the ability to face them without being consumed by anxiety. During lunch breaks, she began experimenting with short listening sessions. She would put on a brief piece, close her eyes, and let herself simply exist in the moment. Sometimes she focused on the intricacies of the melody, noticing the rise and fall of the notes, the subtle harmonies that wove the music together. Other times she let the sound envelop her without analyzing, allowing herself to feel the emotions the music evoked. These breaks became a source of energy and clarity, helping her approach the afternoon with renewed focus and calm. Evenings became a sacred time for longer listening sessions. Aria would light a candle, make a cup of herbal tea, and settle into her favorite chair. Beethoven's sonatas often filled these hours, carrying her through waves of emotion and reflection. She began to notice how different pieces influenced her mood and thoughts. A slow, melancholic piece encouraged introspection, while a more lively composition sparked joy and energy. Music became a tool for self-awareness, teaching her to recognize her feelings and respond with care rather than judgment. One weekend, she decided to create a space specifically for her music ritual. She rearranged her living room, placing a comfortable chair near the window, adding soft lighting, and ensuring her speakers were positioned to create an immersive experience. She added small touches: a throw blanket, a small plant, and a notebook to jot down thoughts and reflections while listening. The room became a sanctuary, a place where she could retreat from the demands of life and immerse herself fully in the music. Aria also started exploring live music events. She attended a small piano recital at a nearby cultural center, feeling nervous at first about being in a public setting. But the experience was transformative. Watching a musician pour emotion into every note, feeling the vibrations in the room, and sharing the experience with an audience created a profound sense of connection. It reminded her that music was not just a personal escape, but a universal language that could bring people together in quiet yet powerful ways. She found herself wanting to share this experience with others. She invited a friend over one evening and played a curated playlist of her favorite pieces. Her friend was initially skeptical, unfamiliar with classical music, but soon they both sat quietly, absorbed in the melodies. Conversation became secondary to the shared experience, yet the connection felt deeper because of it. Arya realized that music could foster connection without words, creating spaces for understanding, empathy, and shared presence. The emotional benefits were clear. But Arya also noticed subtle changes in her habits and mindset. She became more intentional about how she spent her time, choosing activities that aligned with the calm and focus she cultivated through music. Tasks that had once felt tedious or stressful became opportunities to practice mindfulness and presence. Even commuting to work felt different. She would hum softly to herself or mentally follow a melody, transforming the routine into something more graceful and reflective. Arya's relationship with herself shifted as well. She learned to honor her need for rest without guilt. Previously, she had believed that every spare moment had to be productive, but music taught her the value of presence and reflection. She allowed herself to sit in silence, to feel without distraction, and to appreciate life's simple pleasures. This self-compassion extended to other areas of her life. She became more patient, less critical, and more understanding of her own limitations. She also began journaling about her experiences with music. After each long session, she would jot down her feelings, noting which pieces affected her in specific ways and how her mood shifted over time. This practice heightened her awareness of the emotional impact of music and allowed her to see patterns in her responses. Some compositions brought clarity, others introspection, and some sparked creative thoughts that she would later apply to her work or personal projects. Over time, she built a personal guide to understanding her mind and emotions through music. Music became a lens through which she viewed the world. She started noticing rhythms and melodies in everyday life, the pattern of raindrops, the sway of tree branches, the cadence of footsteps. The ordinary became extraordinary, filled with texture and depth she had previously overlooked. This awareness created a sense of joy and wonder, reminding her that beauty could be found even in the most mundane moments. Life no longer felt like a constant race. It had moments of stillness, flow, and harmony. Through these practices, Arya also began to handle stress differently. Challenges at work, conflicts with colleagues, or unexpected problems no longer triggered panic or frustration. She had learned to pause, breathe, and approach situations with a calm, centered mindset. The music served as a foundation, a reminder that even in chaos, there could be harmony and order within her own mind. She became more adaptable, flexible, and resilient, relying on the inner peace cultivated through her musical rituals. Over time, Arya realized that music was not just a pastime. It was a companion and a teacher. It taught her patience, presence, emotional intelligence, and self-compassion. It provided a bridge between her inner world and the external pressures of life, helping her navigate each day with grace and balance. She understood that the benefits extended beyond relaxation. They influenced her thoughts, actions, relationships, and overall quality of life. One evening, as she listened to a long recording of Mozart's symphonies, Arya reflected on the journey so far. The stress that had once dominated her life felt distant. She thought about how far she had come from restless nights and tense mornings to calm, reflective days and peaceful evenings. The music had guided her, not by removing difficulties, but by teaching her how to respond with awareness and care. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for this discovery, knowing that it had fundamentally changed her approach to life. As she finished the final notes of the symphony, Arya felt a profound sense of contentment. Music had shown her that peace was not something to be found outside, but something to be nurtured within. It had become a source of stability, inspiration, and joy. She understood that the world would continue to bring challenges. She now possessed a tool to navigate them with clarity and calm. Through Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart, she had discovered not just relaxation, but a path to a more mindful, present, and fulfilling life. As months passed, Arya noticed that music was shaping her life in ways she had never expected. It was no longer just a source of relaxation or a brief escape from stress. It had become a lens through which she experienced the world. She had developed a deep appreciation for the subtleties of sound, the flow of melodies, and the way music could carry emotions that words sometimes could not express. Classical compositions were no longer background noise, they were companions, teachers and guides. She began sharing this newfound passion with others. Friends and family noticed a difference in her, a calmness and presence that was tangible. Conversations became more meaningful, and her ability to listen with patience and empathy improved. She started inviting friends to her home for quiet listening sessions, creating an environment where people could relax, reflect, and connect. At first, they were hesitant, unsure if they would enjoy long pieces of classical music. But as the hours passed and the music enveloped them, they too began to feel the gentle power of the melodies. The room seemed to hum with warmth, and the shared experience brought people closer without the need for words. Arya also began attending small concerts and recitals. Watching musicians perform live was an entirely different experience from listening at home. She could feel the vibrations of the piano, the rise and fall of orchestral instruments, and the intensity of the performer's emotions. Each note seemed alive, resonating through her body and mind. She learned to appreciate the effort and skill behind every performance, realizing that music was not just an art form, but a profound human expression. It inspired her to practice more mindfulness and patience in her daily life, understanding that mastery in any area requires time, dedication, and care. At home, she continued to refine her music rituals. She created themed playlists depending on her mood or the time of day. Slow, reflective pieces became her evening companions, helping her unwind and process the day. Energetic and uplifting compositions accompanied mornings, infusing her routine with joy and motivation. She noticed that these intentional listening practices had a ripple effect on her mental and emotional state. Tasks at work became easier to approach, and she found herself more creative and focused. Music had become a tool for both relaxation and personal growth. Arya also started combining music with other forms of mindfulness. She practiced gentle stretches or yoga while listening to long classical pieces, allowing the movement and sound to flow together. Cooking became a more deliberate and joyful act when paired with music, as she found herself paying attention to the texture, aroma, and taste of every ingredient. Even simple chores, like cleaning or organizing her space, were transformed into mindful activities. As the rhythm of music created a sense of harmony and purpose, life, which had once felt monotonous and rushed, became a series of experiences to be savored. One significant change was how she dealt with challenges and stress. Previously, difficult situations would overwhelm her, causing anxiety and frustration. Now, she approached problems with a calm and reflective mindset. When faced with a challenging task, she would take a short break to listen to a piece of music, letting her mind reset before returning with renewed focus. Conflicts with colleagues or friends no longer triggered immediate tension. She had learned to pause, breathe, and respond with understanding. Music had taught her the value of patience and presence, allowing her to navigate life with greater clarity and composure. Arya's self-awareness deepened as she spent more time with music. She started noticing subtle patterns in her emotions and energy levels, recognizing which types of compositions helped her feel calm, energized, or reflective. She would plan her listening sessions to support her mental state. Understanding that intentional choices could influence her mood and productivity, this awareness extended beyond music, helping her make more thoughtful decisions in other areas of life. She became more mindful of her interactions, her habits, and the way she spent her time. She also began to document her experiences. Writing in a journal after each long listening session allowed her to reflect on the emotions she felt, the thoughts that arose, and the subtle insights she gained. Over time, she noticed a clear evolution in her mindset and emotional resilience. The journal became a mirror, showing her growth, challenges, and the positive changes she had made. It reinforced the lessons music had taught her, reminding her of the importance of presence, patience, and self-compassion. Friends and family started seeking her advice on relaxation and stress management. Aria shared her experiences with music, explaining how she had used it to cultivate calm and focus. She recommended specific pieces and playlists, encouraging others to explore the world of classical music. Many were surprised by how transformative it could be, and some began their own listening rituals. She realized that the power of music extended beyond her personal experience. It could create a ripple effect, helping others find peace and balance in their lives. Aria's evenings often became times of reflection and gratitude. She would listen to a long piece, close her eyes, and feel the emotions carried by the melodies. She appreciated the beauty in simple moments, the sound of rain outside, the flicker of candlelight, the warmth of a cup of tea. Music helped her slow down and notice the details of life, turning ordinary experiences into meaningful reflections. She realized that relaxation was not a luxury, but a necessary practice for a healthy, balanced life. The emotional depth she discovered through music also encouraged her to explore creativity in other areas. She began experimenting with writing, painting, and other forms of expression. Music became the foundation for inspiration, guiding her thoughts and feelings into tangible creations. She found joy in expressing herself, and the process became another way to integrate calm and mindfulness into her daily routine. It was a reminder that life's beauty could be nurtured through intentional practice and creative engagement. One evening, as she listened to a particularly moving piece by Beethoven, Aria reflected on her journey. The stress and exhaustion that had once dominated her life felt distant. She realized that the transformation was not just about relaxation, but about cultivating a way of living that valued presence, awareness, and emotional balance. Music had become a teacher, a guide, and a companion, offering lessons that extended far beyond sound and rhythm. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, unexpected events, and moments of stress. Yet, she now had tools to navigate these experiences with resilience and grace. Music had shown her that calm was not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of awareness, patience, and self-care. It had taught her to approach life with openness, to find beauty in the everyday, and to value the quiet moments of reflection that allowed her to grow. Aria's journey with music had become a holistic practice, influencing her mind, body, and spirit. She felt more connected to herself and the world around her, more capable of managing stress, and more appreciative of life's subtle pleasures. Classical music had not only provided relaxation, but had reshaped her approach to living, helping her create a life of balance, mindfulness, and joy. Through Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart, she had discovered a way to navigate life with calm, clarity, and a renewed sense of purpose. Over time, Aria realized that music had become an essential part of who she was. It was no longer something she simply listened to in passing. It had become a way of living. Every day she discovered new layers of calm, focus, and emotional understanding that classical music offered her. The melodies of Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart were no longer just compositions. They were companions that guided her through life, offering insights into her emotions and reminding her of the beauty and simplicity. She had begun sharing her experience more openly. Colleagues at work, friends, and even family members noticed her calm demeanor and asked how she managed to stay so composed despite the pressures of daily life. Aria would smile and tell them about her music rituals, explaining how she dedicated time each day to listen with full attention and presence. Many were skeptical at first, thinking that music alone could not make a difference. But when she invited them to sit quietly and listen, they began to feel the subtle, transformative effect of the melodies. It was remarkable how a shared listening experience could create connection, reflection, and peace without any words. Her home had become a place of serenity. Aria had perfected her listening space, making it warm and inviting. Soft lighting, comfortable seating, and a well-positioned speaker system created an environment where music could fully come alive. She would light a candle, brew tea, and immerse herself in long sessions, letting the music guide her thoughts and emotions. Each evening became a journey, an exploration of feelings, memories, and imagination. She noticed that even the simplest pieces could evoke profound emotions, transporting her to different moods and perspectives. One weekend, she organized a small gathering for friends who were curious about classical music. She prepared snacks, arranged comfortable seating, and curated a playlist of long, flowing pieces that she felt best conveyed the depth and beauty of the genre. As the music played, the room became quiet, each person absorbed in the sound. Conversations slowed, smiles softened, and there was a gentle sense of presence in the space. At the end of the session, her friends shared how they felt refreshed, relaxed, and unexpectedly moved. Arya realized that music had a gift beyond her personal experience. It could create calm and connection for others too. Attending live performances became another meaningful aspect of her life. Arya discovered that watching musicians perform in real time, feeling the vibrations, and observing their dedication added a new dimension to her appreciation. She marveled at how performers could convey deep emotion through their instruments, how a simple melody could capture joy, sorrow, and everything in between. Each recital reminded her that music was a universal language, one that could unite people and express what words often could not. Through these experiences, Arya noticed changes in her perception of life. She had always rushed from one task to another, rarely pausing to appreciate small details. Music taught her the value of attention and mindfulness. She began noticing the subtle rhythms of everyday life, the way sunlight moved across her walls, the sound of wind through trees, the gentle cadence of footsteps on the street. Ordinary moments gained a new richness, filled with texture, color, and emotion. Life felt fuller, more vibrant, and more meaningful. Arya's emotional resilience had grown significantly. Before, stressful situations would overwhelm her, causing tension and anxiety. Now, she could face challenges with a calm and reflective mindset. If she encountered a difficult situation at work or in her personal life, she would take a moment to breathe, sometimes listening to a piece of music to reset her mind. She realized that relaxation and clarity were not passive states but active practices. Music had taught her that she could navigate life with grace. Even when faced with pressures and uncertainties, she also explored combining music with creative activities. Painting, writing, and journaling became more enjoyable and inspired when paired with the right pieces. Music guided her thoughts and emotions, allowing her to express herself more freely and fully. This creative engagement added another layer of fulfillment to her life, reinforcing the lessons of mindfulness, patience, and presence that music had already provided. She found that the act of creating, accompanied by classical melodies, brought a sense of harmony and completeness that was deeply satisfying. As she reflected on her journey, Arya noticed the profound impact music had on her relationships. She was more patient, attentive, and empathetic, qualities that improved her interactions with family, friends, and colleagues. She had learned to listen not only to music but to people, to be present and engaged without judgment or distraction. Her friends began to adopt similar listening practices, inspired by the calm and focus they observed in her. She felt gratified knowing that the positive influence of music extended beyond herself. Touching the lives of those around her, music had also reshaped her understanding of personal well-being. She realized that relaxation was not just a luxury, but an essential part of life. Taking time to listen, reflect, and be present allowed her to recharge mentally, emotionally, and physically. She no longer felt guilty about pausing or taking time for herself. She understood that self-care was vital for balance and happiness. Music had taught her that true relaxation came from presence and intention, not from avoidance or distraction. Even mundane activities gained new meaning. Cooking, cleaning, or walking became opportunities to immerse herself in the flow of music. She noticed how her movements synchronized with melodies, how the rhythm of a piece could guide her pace and energy. Simple tasks, once tedious, became moments of mindfulness and enjoyment. Life in its ordinary details became a canvas for experience and reflection. It's a place where music provided structure and meaning. Over time, Arya's connection to music deepened into a form of meditation. She would sit quietly, eyes closed, and listen attentively, letting each note resonate in her mind and body. She discovered that this practice helped her observe thoughts and emotions without judgment, creating a sense of inner clarity and peace. The music guided her awareness, allowing her to release tension, focus her mind, and cultivate gratitude for the present moment. It became a daily practice that strengthened her emotional intelligence and resilience. One evening, as she listened to a long recording of Mozart's symphonies, Aria reflected on how far she had come. The stress, exhaustion, and restless nights that had once dominated her life seemed like distant memories. She recognized that music had not simply offered relaxation. It had transformed the way she approached life, teaching her patience, awareness, and presence. She felt gratitude for the discovery and the consistent practice that had reshaped her. Daily experience, Aria realized that the impact of music extended beyond the notes and rhythms. It had become a foundation for personal growth, emotional balance, and meaningful connection. It had taught her that life was not only about accomplishing tasks or meeting deadlines, but about cultivating moments of presence, reflection, and joy. The melodies of Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart were not just beautiful sounds, they were guides, companions, and teachers that reminded her of the richness and depth of life. As the night wore on, Aria felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, but she now had tools to navigate them with grace and clarity. Music had shown her that calm was not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of mindfulness, attention, and self-compassion. Through these lessons, she had discovered a life filled with balance, awareness, and appreciation for the subtle beauty in everyday moments. With each passing day, Aria continued to nurture her relationship with music. She explored new compositions, attended live performances, and created shared listening experiences for friends and family. The lessons of patience, presence, and emotional awareness remained at the core of her daily life. She felt a profound connection to the music, to herself, and to the world around her. It was a connection that offered comfort, inspiration, and a renewed sense of purpose. In the end, Aria understood that music had become a lifelong companion, one that would continue to guide her through joys and challenges alike. It had taught her the value of mindful living, emotional balance, and meaningful connection. Through classical music, she had discovered a path to a more present, intentional, and fulfilling life. The melodies of Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart were more than compositions. They were keys to unlocking peace, clarity, and a deeper appreciation for the richness of life. One note at a time. After months of daily immersion in classical music, Aria found that her appreciation for life had deepened in unexpected ways. Each day seemed richer, filled with layers of experience she had once overlooked. The melodies of Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart were no longer simply a refuge. They were companions that accompanied her through the rhythms of her daily life, shaping her thoughts, emotions, and even her actions. One morning, as she prepared her breakfast, Aria played a gentle Chopin nocturne. The soft piano notes seemed to stretch the morning, giving her the rare gift of time. She moved slowly, savoring the aroma of freshly brewed tea and the warmth of the sun streaming through her window. For the first time in years, she felt fully present. The usual rush of her morning, which had once left her feeling anxious and scattered, was replaced by a calm awareness. Every sip of tea, every movement of her hands felt intentional and alive. She realized that music had transformed her perception of ordinary moments, turning them into opportunities for mindfulness and reflection at work. Aria noticed subtle changes in the way she interacted with colleagues. She approached conversations with patience and empathy, listening fully without the need to immediately respond or react. Even during tense moments, she maintained a quiet composure, allowing herself to process situations calmly before taking action. Her colleagues began to notice a change in her demeanor, often commenting on how serene and attentive she appeared. Music had given her the ability to cultivate presence and emotional balance, which naturally influenced her professional environment during lunch breaks. She experimented with shorter listening sessions, She would select a brief piece of Mozart or a calming Beethoven interlude and allow herself a pause from the day's tasks. Even 5 minutes of focused listening helped her reset, clearing her mind and easing tension. These small pockets of calm became essential for maintaining productivity and focus throughout the day. She realized that relaxation was not a passive state, but an active practice, one that required attention and intention. Evenings remained the most sacred part of her day. Arya had perfected her listening space, creating an atmosphere that invited deep reflection. Soft lighting, a comfortable chair, and the gentle flicker of candlelight transformed her apartment into a personal sanctuary. She would brew herbal tea, settle in, and allow herself hours of uninterrupted listening. The melodies carried her through waves of emotion, guiding her to explore thoughts and feelings she had previously avoided or ignored. She discovered that music could evoke subtle memories, inspire creative ideas, and provide clarity on complex emotions. Arya also began to explore live performances more actively. She attended small recitals and chamber music concerts, finding that experiencing music in person brought a new depth to her appreciation. The energy of the performers, the vibrations of instruments, and the collective presence of an audience created a shared experience unlike anything she had felt at home. She began to understand music as a form of communication, one that could express what words often could not. These experiences inspired her to deepen her personal practice and to consider ways she might share the transformative power of music with others. She decided to organize a small community event in her neighborhood, inviting friends, family, and acquaintances to experience classical music in an informal, welcoming setting. Arya prepared a selection of long-play compositions, creating a flow that encouraged relaxation, reflection, and connection. When the day arrived, attendees gathered in her living room, some curious and unsure of what to expect. As the music played, a remarkable transformation took place. Conversations softened, tensions melted, and a sense of shared presence filled the space. People smiled, closed their eyes, and let themselves simply exist in the moment. Arya watched quietly, feeling a profound satisfaction at how music could create calm and connection beyond her own experience. Through this process, Arya began to notice changes in her personal creativity. She explored writing, painting, and journaling while listening to music, finding that the compositions guided her thoughts and inspired ideas. Music provided a rhythm and structure that encouraged expression and exploration. Over time, she developed a rich collection of reflections, sketches, and written pieces, each influenced by the emotions and energy of the music she engaged with. This creative practice became another layer of mindfulness, allowing her to integrate calm, focus, and insight into her daily life. Arya's emotional resilience continued to grow. Where she once felt overwhelmed by stress or anxiety, she now responded with awareness and patience. She understood that challenges were inevitable, but she had learned to approach them without being consumed. Music had become a tool for emotional regulation, helping her navigate difficult moments with a sense of clarity and balance. She also discovered that these lessons extended to her relationships. She was more present, understanding, and compassionate, qualities that strengthened her connections with others, and created a supportive network of shared calm and understanding. Her evenings of long, listening sessions became moments of reflection and gratitude. Arya often wrote down her observations, noting the emotions stirred by each piece, insights gained, and patterns in her responses. This practice allowed her to track her growth, understand herself better, and deepen her awareness of how music influenced her mind and body. It also reinforced her commitment to intentional living, highlighting the value of pauses, reflection, and mindful engagement with the world around her. Even ordinary routines were transformed by music. Cooking, cleaning, and walking became opportunities for presence and enjoyment. She synchronized movements with melodies, finding rhythm in actions that had once been automatic and mechanical. Tasks that previously felt tedious now carried a sense of purpose and flow. Life, in its simplest moments, became a canvas for mindfulness and reflection, showing her that beauty could be found in the mundane when approached with attention and care. Arya also explored the subtle ways music influenced her thoughts and moods. She became more attuned to how different compositions affected her energy, focus, and emotional state. Over time, she developed an intuitive sense for which pieces to listen to in specific context, synergizing compositions in the morning, reflective pieces in the afternoon, and calming melodies in the evening. This awareness allowed her to intentionally shape her daily experience, cultivating balance and well-being through sound. Her relationship with the world grew deeper as well. She began noticing patterns, rhythms, and harmonies in nature and daily life. The sound of rain tapping against the window, the sway of tree branches in the wind, and the subtle cadence of footsteps all gained a new dimension of appreciation. Music had trained her to listen not only to sound, but to life itself, revealing beauty and order in places she had previously overlooked. This heightened awareness brought a sense of connection and gratitude that extended beyond personal experience.